Welcome to This Week from Blue Mountain Broadcasting. I'm Lynelle Ellis, your host, and I am so glad that you've tuned in today. Later on in the show, I'm going to be interviewing Volker Henning from Walla Walla University as he talks about how Walla Walla University is going to get going in person again in the fall. So please stay tuned for that later on. And also, I have some important station news to share with you. Let's start, though, with a devotional thought. Recently, our family has been reading in the book of Judges. Now, Judges is not an easy book to read. There are so many strange stories in there, lots of stuff about idolatry and evil and foolishness and violence. And one phrase that seems to keep coming up over and over again in this book is this one from Judges 17:6. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And I think that there's a lot packed into that phrase. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Not only was there no king, there was no prophet, and seemingly there was no spiritual leader for the people who were the descendants of Israel. Everybody was just doing whatever they thought was best. For example, there was a man named Micah, whose mother decided to have some images or idols made from a significant amount of silver that she had. And these idols were passed on to her son, Micah. Now, Micah hired a Levite that he met to be his priest, and he basically made up his own religion with this priest. He had the priest, he had an ephod, and he had these images. It was some kind of hybrid religion that had some basis in the true worship of God, but was mixed with the pagan religions of the nations that were all around him. And Micah just thought everything was wonderful and perfect until some men from the tribe of Dan came and took his idols, his ephod, and his priest away by force. Then the whole tribe of Dan practiced this mixed up religion. And by the way, the tribe of Dan also stole away property from a peaceful people that they sabotaged and conquered, all in the name of their new made-up religion with the supposed blessing of God. So I've been thinking about what would make Micah and the Danites do such a thing. And it has to go back to that phrase we were talking about. They were doing whatever was right in their own eyes. And their ideas of the Israelite religion and their ideas of God were notional. In other words, they didn't have a real foundation for their beliefs. Now, admittedly, it was really difficult at that time to find a copy of the writings of Moses or the Torah. It was really hard to find something like that you could read, and probably many of the people couldn't even read themselves. And these copies were scarce. But since there was no spiritual leader reading God's word to the people and sharing it with them, they were sinking into ignorance about the true worship of God. They were notional believers. Whatever ideas or notions they had about God that came out of their own thoughts about what it might mean to worship Him, that's what they did. They just picked up a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then they put it all together to make up their own religious practices. It seems like we might learn a lot from the people whose stories are told in the book of Judges. People like Micah and the tribe of Dan. It might not be so different today. When we look really carefully at Christianity, we can see that there are some notions in practice that aren't really biblical. I think it would be worth it for us to consider our own religious beliefs and practices and our own worship of God and ask ourselves if we are notional or biblical. It feels like we Christians are increasingly notional. We have this kind of popular idea about what it means to be a Christ follower, and we just go with that. And whatever feels good and whatever feels right, That's what we do, rather than digging carefully and deeply into the Bible to understand what true worship of God looks like. I'm challenging myself, and I'm challenging all of us to use the Bibles that we likely have in our homes. And thankfully, we aren't in the situation that the people were in the time of the judges. We have ready access to the Bible. In fact, I have lots of Bibles at my house. I bet you do too. And besides that, I have access to the Bible in just about every translation on my computer or my tablet or my phone. And I would guess you do too. We just need to take advantage of this privilege and make ourselves biblically literate, well-informed and guided by the Holy Spirit as we dig in and learn what God has in mind for our lives. We can be truly biblical Christians rather than notional. Rather than doing whatever is right in our own eyes, we want to do what's right in God's eyes. Please stay tuned. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Joining me now is Volker Henning, Vice President for Academic Administration at Walla Walla University. And Volker, it is really good to have you here today.
Well, it's good to be here with you, Lynelle. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your role, because I just said a really long title.
Yeah, other people might refer to it as the academic dean. So what I am, I'm in charge of the academic program overall at the university.
All right, and so faculty members are interacting with you.
Yes.
As you're responsible for how the teaching goes, really overall.
Mm-hmm. Primarily, I interact with the chairs and deans, and then they in turn with their faculty members. But yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we know, all of us, nobody's surprised to hear that there have been a lot of challenges with this COVID-19 pandemic for academic institutions of all kinds, from kindergarten all the way up. Mm-hmm. What has this been like for Walla Walla University?
Well, it's been, we've been in constant crisis mode. We've been constantly changing in terms of what we've had to do. It seems like every day brings new challenges and new approaches that we have to put in place to make things work.
And spring quarter was really different than it usually is. What was that like for faculty and staff?
Well, you might be able to answer the faculty side since you are a faculty member, but you know, it was a mixed thing. It was mixed. There were some faculty members that were quite adept at teaching online, and it was you know, just a continuation of what they usually do. For others, it was much more of a new thing, and they had to get into it over spring break, and so they had, you know, all of a week to readjust the direction of their classes and to teach them very differently, because online classes are not just classes that are now taught to a camera or to a computer. It's a very different model. It's you're not so much the presenter up front, but you're kind of more of a coach that's coming alongside with the students in helping them in their learning. So it's a very different kind of a feel. And the range of experiences that faculty had, the range of experiences that students had, as you might be able to imagine, just kind of ran the gamut.
Yes.
You know, for faculty members, all of a sudden they had to teach from home because we closed the campus, and so everybody went home. And for those who have small children, for instance, all of a sudden they were teaching with children running around in the house, and not, in some cases, children that didn't understand why mom or dad now had no time for them, but they were always interacting with the camera, with the computer. And so it was difficult for them. For students, likewise, very, very mixed and very different experiences. Some had little difficulty, and in fact, some reported that they were able to learn better in that environment and that they did exceedingly well. Others survived, and then there were a few that struggled. Yes. And some of the struggles came from situations like other siblings in the home that they now maybe all of a sudden were responsible for, because they weren't in the residence hall where they had just a roommate, but now they were back home with younger siblings. Mom and dad were off to work, and so now they were in charge of the household, and at the same time trying to learn. Or there were other students, siblings of theirs and other residents of the house that may also be using the internet facilities. And so then bandwidth became a problem for some students, and it was kind of like, okay, now I've got to go to class for the next hour, so nobody else on the computer, please, because I need the bandwidth. And so there were those kind of negotiations. And then we even had the unfortunate stories that came back to us from some students who had to care for their parents who may have come down with COVID-19.
Yes.
And so we had several instances of those kind of situations. And so it was quite a range of experiences for students and for faculty. Far from ideal, not what any of us wished for, but nonetheless, learning took place.
It did.
It did. Students succeeded in their classes, and for the most part are able to progress on into the next quarter of their experience.
That urgent situation really showed how flexible and creative, really, a lot of people could be on very short notice.
Yeah.
Getting through it.
Yeah, I think both faculty and students showed a high degree of resilience and adapting to situations that they really didn't anticipate doing, and did so very remarkably well.
So what does fall look like then for Walla Walla University?
Well,
we're getting closer and closer to fall quarter.
Yeah, there's not a day that goes by where we don't have planning meetings to decide, how to handle a particular situation. Fall is going to be different again than anything we've experienced in the past, because we are planning on face-to-face instruction. So the vast majority of students will be coming back to campus, but it'll be a very different campus because of the rules of social distancing and the limitations that we have in classrooms, the spacing out that is necessary in order to be safe, and for everybody to be wearing masks. Teachers and students alike in the classrooms, and I've heard some express concern that they may not be able to recognize each other, and it's much more difficult to, read facial expressions when you are missing so much of it. And so there's going to be some challenges as far as the adjusting to that new situation. And
when you talk about those challenges, I know we receive emails as faculty every so often with some ideas about where we're headed with that and guidelines. And you as administrators at Walla Walla University have to think of so many little details just about how we will be positioned in classrooms.
Yes.
And the practicalities of how we will go in and out of buildings and rooms, and just lots of minutia kind of.
Right, exactly.
But to keep it an environment where we can be safe and where everyone can feel comfortable.
Well, I mean, that's the overarching goal, to keep everybody as safe as we possibly can. And so in order to keep everybody safe, knowing that we have even some who are considered vulnerable population, members of vulnerable populations, we're taking all kinds of precautions. We're going to have
can you tell us some of those things that will happen?
Absolutely. Yeah. We've got hand sanitation, sanitizer stations all over. We're actually going to start the quarter by everybody, faculty, students, staff, receiving a welcome back to school package that has in it, I think it's 7 masks, and has also, in addition to that, some hand sanitizer and a thermometer and a set of instructions as to, just how the quarter is going to go, as a basis, as starting point. And then, of course, there'll be cleaning protocols that will take place in classrooms, distancing that takes place in classrooms in terms of how students are positioned and the separation between the faculty member and the students. And so those are some of the things that we've constantly had to grapple with. And then, of course, there's some things that are going to be exceedingly difficult to do. And some of those are some of the recreational activities that students have come to know and love and appreciate that really don't fall within the guidelines of what we're allowed to do.
And will there be changes in the schedule for fall quarter? I kind of know the answer to this one.
Well, yes, but not substantial changes. I think the biggest changes are going to be in terms of teaching space. There may be faculty, or there are faculty, who have been used to teaching in a particular room that are now going to have to move their class, or their class is going to be moved to a larger room to allow for the physical distancing. And so some of those kind of things are definitely taking place. We also have some classrooms that we've outfitted for bimodal education. And so that's something that's different. It's not the schedule, but it's a difference that we anticipate utilizing quite heavily in the fall, so that there can be students who are sitting in the classroom and others that are joining live from someplace at a distance.
Yes.
So that's another change that is very much going to be a part of the fall.
And we'll start the whole fall quarter earlier than usual.
Yes. That's another decision we've made. We are starting the fall quarter 2 weeks early, and the reason for that is so that we can complete the entire quarter by Thanksgiving. Because in the past we had the Thanksgiving break, a 1 week break where students go, I want to say home, but they go to all kinds of other places as well.
Yes.
And of course, the more places that students go to and then come back from there, the more possibility there is for them bringing back infections and potentially the COVID-19 virus with them. And so we felt like if we have one less opportunity of that and just end the quarter by Thanksgiving, it will really be helpful. So that's a big change in terms of the overall schedule.
Yes, and we'll give a long break between fall quarter and winter.
Right, and we hope the virus is completely gone
by
the time January 4 comes. Either that, or else that everybody has built up immunity to it.
Yes. And how is enrollment looking for fall?
Yeah, it's somewhat of a mixed picture. Most of our returning students are planning to be back on campus. So those are coming back in fairly normal numbers. There's always a few that transfer to various places or take a quarter off or the like. But for the most part, those numbers are pretty solid. Now, when it comes to freshmen, it's a little bit of a different story. Our freshman count has been very high the last 2 years. We've had, in fact, the highest freshman numbers in some 40 years. So we've had some very, very large classes. That is really lagging behind this time. Of course, you know, you don't know how many you're going to have until we call it the 10th day, 10 days into the quarter, when we really count the noses and see how many students we really have. So, you know, I don't want to make any projections, but at this point we're running behind.
A lot of people just probably trying to figure out what it is they are going to do.
Exactly, and you know, again, to facilitate some of those who perhaps are at the greatest risk, we do have some classes this fall that are going to be offered strictly online. So we'll have a few students, not a large number, but that will be taking courses from Walla Walla University, but they will be at a distance.
Yes. And other institutions of higher education are dealing with these same things, dealing with them in similar ways?
Yes. Obviously, there's a range of what institutions have decided to do. There are institutions that have decided not to have fall classes on campus, to be entirely online. We have not made that decision. We have decided that we will be largely face-to-face and have some classes that will be taught in somewhat of a hybrid and somewhat slightly different manner, but for the most part, a very similar experience in the classroom to what students have had in the past.
And this is kind of my final question is really, Walla Walla is a university, is a large entity here in the Valley. What are the responsibilities of an institution like this that has a large number of students coming in? What's responsibility to the community?
Yeah. I mean, we see our responsibility to the community as being something that is extremely important. And we covet a good relationship with the community. And so as a result of that, we're doing everything we possibly can to have a safe experience on campus, and also to expect that of our students as they mix with the community, as they go out into the community, which they will to some extent, but to do so in a very responsible manner, and to wear masks and to do whatever else is in the safeguards that have been put in place and that the society expects, because we want to be a good citizen of College Place, a good citizen of Walla Walla, and have our students be exemplary students as far as that goes. And so, one of the things that we are putting in place to help that become a reality, we have a student code of conduct that we will ask each student to sign. And that student code of conduct goes into the relationship that they will have with the community and how they are to conduct themselves in the community. Very
good. Well, I know that we are both looking forward to a good quarter coming up at Walla Walla University. A different one, but a good one.
Right.
And good to see our students in person again.
Yeah.
So.
And we're hearing from students that are looking forward to coming back, that can't wait for summer to be over, and are delighted that they're going to be back in the classroom. And then some that are quite apprehensive about what is it going to be like to be on a campus that is so different. And that difference is one that is going to be experienced in campuses around the country. Nobody is going to be able to function in exactly the same way until this pandemic is over.
Yes. I want to thank you so much, Volker, for taking time to share these things with us.
Well, you're very welcome. It's a delight to be here, and we look forward to a good fall.
Yes. And thank you for watching. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's time now for Station News. And first I want to talk with you about some programming things that are happening at the station. One of them is that we are bringing back the Village Church Sabbath School program that you were used to during those first few months when we were at home with the pandemic. And it's coming back starting this week. So 10 a.m. on Blue Mountain Television and on our stream, you'll be able to see the Village Church Sabbath School program. And then also we have a new program called Heaven's Call that I did mention last week, but that's taking place Tuesdays at 9 p.m. and that program is from Sean Boonstra and the Voice of Prophecy. So Tuesdays at 9 p.m. for Heaven's Call. Also an update about our tower. We have several of the sections put together on the new tower that's going up at the new facility, and very soon it will actually be put together and go on up so that we can begin to put our equipment there. Of course, we have a lot of renovations still to do at the new facility, and we need your donations in order to be able to do those. So we will only be able to progress with this project as your donations come in specifically for the new facility on Wallula Road. So I encourage you, please send a donation for that purpose. Also want to let you know that we're making progress on our upgrade to high definition for Blue Mountain Television and for our stream, and making some improvements as well to our online streaming. So while those two things won't happen immediately, we certainly are in that process and working on them, and I wanted you to know that. That's something that I'm really looking forward to at the station, having a higher quality signal in everything that we do. It's going to be really great. And we also wanted you to know that we're continuing to work on Secret Life of the Desert. That program is in editing, and we're looking forward to being able to share it with you before too long as well. And again, encourage your prayers for the station, your donations for the station, and these things are all really, really important as we work together for this ministry at Blue Mountain Television. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.